Hey y'all, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to check out another one of my videos. Today is a bit of an impromptu video. It's going to be more of a laid back video. I kind of wanted to do this type of video on a live stream because I thought it'd be a little bit more fun and laid back, kind of like how I'm planning to do it. However, my live streams right now, when I am doing the live stream, the quality isn't the best. So I figured I'll record it like a typical video like I would do, but then I'm going to leave the editing and everything very laid back so I can do a quick turnaround and hopefully get this video out to you before too long. But yeah, today's video, as you saw from the title, I'm going to be taking the Hela palette and I'm going to be comparing it against all the palettes that you guys requested. I put on my Instagram and on my YouTube, I said, I've been hearing a lot of people in the comment section of my video for the Odens Eye Hela palette say like, I haven't seen anyone compare it to this palette. I wish you would have compared it to this palette, such and such. So I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and ask you guys what you want to see and I'll just do a quick little video and we're just going to do arm swatches. So no like on the eyes application, but I'm going to swatch the Hela palette against all the palettes that you guys asked so you guys can see those comparisons for yourself here on camera. So that is what we're going to do today. If you missed my initial video, I'll go ahead and leave it linked up here as well as down below in the description box. And in that video, I kind of introduced the Hela palette, Odens Eye, and Angelica's collab, and I also compare it against the Kaledios Flower Punk palette. Now, when I asked you guys, I got a lot of requests saying I want to see it compared against this palette, and I was like, you guys, I already have that comparison for you, so I know you probably missed it because I just put it in like the bottom corner of the thumbnail. But if you were wanting to see the Flower Punk palette compared against the Hela palette, that video is already live and I'll leave it linked down below as I said, but you can see not only swatches comparison, but I also use them both on my eyes in that video. So I've done that already and I got a huge pile over here to go through, so let me go ahead and roll the intro and then we can get right into it. I should also put out there that I am using a microphone for the first time in one of my videos. I finally upgraded and have a little mic hanging over my head. It's the first time I'm doing a full video. I've done a few test runs with it, but I hope the audio is okay, and if it's a little rough, feel free to let me know, your recommendations, or kind of like, hey, it's a little, loud, it's a little muffled, whatever the case is, so that I can learn and tweak it as I go. But yeah, hopefully the audio will start sounding better as I get the hang of this thing, and hopefully it'll just help all around. Also too, I have some nails popping off, so if you're wondering why I have this kind of mismatched type of manicure, it's because it's time for a new manicure, so I got some naked fingers today. So now we can go ahead and hop in. Okay, so first off, I'm gonna go through the YouTube comments and address all of the comments I got there. But before we do that, I need to have this swatched out on my arm so then I can swatch out the other one opposite of that. And I was trying to think if I should do them on one arm and then maybe I can swatch the comparison palette on the other arm and then hold it up like that. I feel like that'll be a better way to do it than trying to like fit them both on my arm, because trying to wipe them off would get messy very quickly. So I am gonna go ahead and apologize for the arm hair because it's been a little while since I have waxed my arm, so it's not the smoothest like I typically like, especially for swatching, but we're gonna make do. So let me go ahead and swatch this really quick and then we can move on. All right, so now that my hand is nice and dirty, there is the Hela palette all swatched out. If you want to see it live, it is in the first video that I did and you can actually see me doing the swatches, but this one I just kind of want to do it off screen so I can make sure like I'm getting good swatches so you guys can compare them to the other palette and making sure all my hairs are kind of laying down in the same direction so that's not distracting. But yes, here we go. Here's the palette. So let's go ahead and dive into the first one that I saw a lot of people asking for, the Odens Eye Giant Wolves palette. I honestly didn't really think about, well, I did think about this and I opened it and I was like, oh no, but I had a lot of people asking for this palette, specifically more so the grungy side and then the multichrome. A lot of people were like, is it really close to the multichrome in the Odens Eye Giant Wolves palette? So let me go ahead and swatch. I'm going to take Astral, we'll do Flare because there's a lot of greens in the other palette. We're going to do Antipod, this one. We'll do this Skull because there is that dark purple in the Hela palette as well. So these are the first four that we'll start with, and I'm going to swatch it out on here. I figured I wouldn't swatch the whole palette just because I feel like, there's a lot of shades that I don't think are in the Hela palette, but we can at least swatch the shades that are similar. And the majority of people who I saw asking for this palette to be swatched out was mostly due to the multichrome in this palette. Also this white shade I feel like reminds me of that shade. I forget if this one's a multichrome. I don't think so. I think it's a blue one. But there are the first four, and as you can see, I think there are some similarities with that purple. Definitely not exact, and then the greens, you could pair them up pretty close. but again, not exact. And the quality of the, like the formula of the shimmer green is very different from the formula of the shimmer greens in the Hela palette. The two are just kind of different. The Giant Wolves is a little bit more flaky and crumbly, whereas the ones in the Hela palette I feel like are very smooth and just a smoother formula. All right, so then the next four, I'm gonna take this dark green, and I was gonna skip over the purples, but let's just do it. We'll do this one, and might as well do this one, even though I don't think it's gonna be that close, and then this red, or it's more of like a purple red, but we'll swatch this one too. I'm gonna put these over on this side just because, and then really quick, the last one is just going to be that Multichrome at the bottle, Eternal, and we'll go ahead and swatch it right here. Hopefully I'm in screen. Okay, so now I'm gonna zoom in really close so you guys can see, and I'll just let you guys look for a minute, but here are the two palettes. So as you can see, definitely some similarities, but not quite exact, and I wouldn't even call the Multichrome exact at all. It's more down here. There's a lot more red in the Hela palette, and the one in the Giant Wolves is a lot more like, it has red in there, but it's also got a lot of blue in there that I feel like the other Multichrome doesn't have that blue, that iciness to the Multichrome that is in the Giant Wolves palette. Okay, I got like 1 or 2 comments saying they wanted to see the Hummingbird palette, but when they mentioned the Hummingbird palette, it was most specifically just the Multichrome that they were curious how close it is to the Multichrome in the Hela palette. So I'm just gonna swatch that because honestly, putting these two side by side, like, yeah, the greens are similar. I guess I could swatch that one. And maybe the purples, that purple, those two purples could be similar, but that's really it. There's not a whole lot. So we'll swatch the green, the purple, and the Multichrome, just because I feel like those are the closest. The Multichromes have such a smooth feel to it. It's just very distinct. It's almost like, it feels like a Super Shock, but it doesn't have like the softness of a Super Shock, if that makes any sense. Like it doesn't, you know, it's not squishy like those are, but it just has that feel to it. I can't explain it. But anyway, let me go ahead and swatch. I'll go put them up side by side. Hopefully you guys can see. Hopefully I'm like holding my hands right. This is kind of difficult. But anyway, hopefully you guys can see. So here's the Multichromes. I'm putting them kind of close together. Definitely a whole lot more purple with the Hummingbird palette for sure. The greens are close but still different in my opinion. And the purples, I would say the one in the Hummingbird palette is like a grayed out version, a bit softer version of the purple here. There's just a little bit more grayishness to it. But I mean, the greens are kind of close. And then the Multichromes, honestly, this one kind of reminds me more so of this more duochrome shadow. It's not really a multichrome than the Multichrome. At least this one I always consider a multichrome. I don't know, these two shadows, it kind of reminds me more so of this. But this has a whole lot of more depth to it, which if you're curious is, what is it called? River. This shade in the palette, it has a whole lot more depth and deepness to it than this shadow does, even though they kind of do have that same purpley, you know, hue to them as you turn them. Okay, then a couple people wanted to see it compared against the Club Nebula palette because this is the palette that Angelica did with Kaledios makeup. I think it was last year. So they were like, that kind of gives me the vibes of this palette. I definitely didn't see them as that similar, hence why I didn't even think to compare them. But there are those similar tones. It's got a little bit of the green in there, has a little bit of the purple. It's got the pink in there, but I definitely think this as a whole is a much different vibe that, like as a whole, the type of looks you're gonna get than the Hela palette. The Hela has a whole lot, I feel like, brighter, has more lighter toned, you know, options. I do think now looking at them side by side, these two would probably pair well nicely, like really, really nicely, because there are a lot of deep tones in the Club Nebula, and not, you know, there are still deep tones in here, but there's a lot more of the mid-tone, you know, lighter tones in the Hela palette. So, I mean, these two would probably pair really nicely, but because I did get some people asking, I'm gonna go ahead and swatch it out. And because it's such a big palette, I'm just gonna go ahead and swatch the whole thing out on my arm, and then we'll just put the two arms together so you guys can see them as a whole, just swatches, you know, see how close they really are. Alright, so here is the palette all swatched out. I just did it off screen to make it quick and easy. I definitely can see some similarities with these kind of multichrome shadows up here, especially this one because it has a lot of that like pink and red that I see in this multichrome here. Maybe not as much gold as the Hela one has. And then, you know, the darker shades, you know, especially this more muted purplish shade, I can kind of see as well the similarities there. And then, you know, the greens, there really isn't any shade of green like that in the Hela, but I'm going to show you them side by side. But this way you guys are able to see them side by side. Like I say, I feel like these two palettes will pair really well together, but as far as like duping each other, yeah, maybe that dark green is pretty darn close. And the multichromes are close-ish, but I still think different. And then the purples, sure, the purples could be as close and dupeable as well, but I feel like that's about where it ends when we're talking about like dupes. Similarities, yes, there are many, but as far as duping, you know, itself with, you know, the two palettes, I really don't see any hard-on, like, oh my goodness, they're like basically the same, you know, with the half of the palette is the same. I do think it's just a couple shadows, maybe the dark green and what did I say, the purple. And then I feel like everything else about it, there's little differences between the Club Nebula and the Hela palette. And then last up that I got in comments, and as soon as I saw it, you know, being asked, I was like, oh my goodness, yes, I can't believe I didn't even think to pull for that palette, but it is the Menagerie Feral palette. And especially when you open it, like there's the green and then there's the pink that you really do see in the Hela palette. Now it's not exact, you know, there's no blue and whatnot, but there's definitely a vibe between the two palettes that I was like, yes, there are some similarities there. So I'm gonna just swatch the palette or the shades from the Feral palette that I definitely feel like are similar enough to swatch out. I feel like this is definitely different, but there is a pink, so let's just swatch it just to compare the pinks. This is a multichrome-ish shade if I remember correctly. So depending on what you put it with, it could go either pink or honestly almost a gold. And then there's this softish color. There's not, no, this is more of a pink. There is this more grayed out tone in the Hela palette, so we're gonna get this. And then what else do we have? I totally missed my pinky. I don't know why I did that. Let's go ahead and grab the pinks just because there are those pinks. I'm gonna pass over the purple. I'm gonna pass over this kind of Mariposa shade. It's kind of like an orange. The yellow, there's some yellow in there, so we'll swatch it. So let me swatch these two out first, or these four out, I'm sorry. So let me dry it off, but we'll do the yellow. Such an intense yellow. This more grayish tone. This was my first palette that I bought from Menagerie, but it also was like one of the first palettes when I was getting into indie makeup. This was one of the first brands I, you know, bit the bullet and tried, because usually I was more mainstream at the time. So this palette brings back a lot of memories. And then this multi-chrome-ish shadow, or maybe it's just a duochrome. You guys know I'm not good at telling the difference. It shifts, that's what I say. It's a shifty shadow. And then this, I definitely don't think there's anything, especially now swatching it, it looks more salmony than pink. But then let's go ahead and swatch out, I think all of the bottom row, might as well, because there is the more pinky tones, and there's the green, and then the shimmer green. I do believe this palette might be discontinued, but it's an oldie, but it's a goodie, so I know a lot of people do have it. So just in case you do have it in your collection and you're wondering, we'll swatch what we can out and see. My palette is definitely getting like old, as in like hard to pick up, and that definitely wasn't an issue when it was first, like I first bought it, because it was super pigmented and soft. But there is the palette swatched out. Okay, here they are. I'm just gonna kind of put it on the screen so you guys can see. I definitely feel like the greens are very close, the green shimmers. The green mattes are close-ish. The pinks, the matte pink is close-ish. Definitely the shimmer pinks are different for sure. I would say the grayish tones here, kind of the grayish, I don't even know, gray, brown, greenish, are definitely close. And actually the yellows are a lot closer than I thought they would be. So overall, like there is a lot in the Feral palette that I really do see as being very similar in the Hela palette. So good eyes, y'all. I was so amazed when I saw that comment. I was like, oh my goodness. And I hadn't even like went and grabbed the palette, but I just, from remembering the color chart, I was like, of course, like why didn't I think of that? Okay, so those were all the ones that I saw in the comment section under the Hela video that I did. So now I'm gonna go to my community tab where I asked, and I was like, hey, I might do this video where I'm gonna swatch them all. What other palettes should I reach out for? So let's see. I see a few similar shades to It's Freakin' Bats. Would be interesting to see if they're close with the few they have in common. So I grabbed my It's Bats, and let's open it up and see which ones are close. Okay, definitely the green. Definitely this purple, I'll swatch it out. What else? This tone over here. This tone I can see some similarities. As far as the purpley shimmers, I really don't see that type of purple in the Hela palette swatches. There's a little bit of purple tone with the shimmer, but it's definitely a very different kind to what I see here. And then there's none of these tones in the palette, so I'm just gonna swatch the few that I said. So we got Dairy. The purpley tone, I do feel like this is a lot more like purple, whereas the other one's like a reddish purple. We'll do, I can't read upside down, Trappa. We'll do this shade. We'll do Sam. This one might not be super close, but it's quite the blinding color. Kind of makes me think of the Multichrome in there. We'll go ahead and do this green. Should I do Adams? I feel like Adams is a very different green from what's in the palette. Let me go ahead and grab this one. I feel like these four are the strongest that I see in the It's Freakin' Bats palette. So let's swatch her out and see if these shades and these tones are really similar. And I think you guys have good eyes because I definitely can see some. Okay, so there it is. Okay, so there it is against the palette. I'm trying to like look through my hands at the mirror. I definitely see similarities when it comes to the more muddy tone. I forget what it was, this matte one, and also the purple one. Like I see the muddy tones up here with the mattes, and then the purple tone back here. Again, more like a muted, kind of like a grayed out purple than this one, but I still see similarities. And then the green, not quite exact, but it does really remind me of this shimmer green right here. The one that I did in the middle, Sam, definitely nothing similar. I think I just like that shade. That's why I wanted to swatch it. But besides that, I don't really see anything super similar. But yeah, I do think that the ones that you have spotted in the palette, they are very close. The green, those three. The green, shimmer and matte, and then that matte purple, I definitely feel like are close. You know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and do it because I feel like someone's gonna say, why didn't you do the green? The matte green atom. So here we are. I'm gonna swatch it where it's dry because I feel like I will do it on my hand because my arm is very wet. Just in case you were curious, here it is. Definitely more of a blue-based green than the green in the Hela palette. It has a lot more of something else. I think it's blue, but I could be wrong, but it's definitely just a different hue overall. Okay, next up was, I'm curious about comparing potential shades to use for duping the I Heart Revolution Tasty Avocado palette, which I do have, particularly half green gold, pear lime, and smoothie. Okay. Let me see. Let me go ahead and grab them because they're 4, so I have 4 fingers. We got half green gold, pear, lime, and smoothie. Okay, I read those together. Pear, lime, and then I'm gonna have to come back in a minute for smoothie. Let me go ahead and swatch the ones that she requested on my arm so you guys can see. And then I'll look through the palette and see if there's anything else. Let me grab a little bit more of that. My pinky never does good swatches because I just doesn't have a whole lot of real estate on my little pinky. Okay, so there's the 4 so far, and let me also grab a smoothie, which is more of a greeny type, or a blue-green type green. Blue in it or something. It's a very mint, there you go. Like a mint green. And then looking at the palette, she said, I should go on. Depending on lighting used in various promo photographs, it's difficult to tell if some shades in the Odens Eye palette lean more green, gold, or yellow, particularly shades like Venom, Underworld, Fluorescent, Moss, and Golden Bridge. Okay, so like these tones right here is kind of all she was referring to. And I definitely feel like these as a whole lean very green yellow, which I feel like is where you're gonna find the difference between the Tasty Avocado palette, because it's much more of like there is some green yellow in here, but a lot of them are like minty greens or like blue greens, so I think that's where you're gonna see the difference. But anyway, let me see if there's any others. So those are the 5 she requested, and also looking at it, I feel like the Haas shade would be similar to the dark green in the palette. Guacamole, it's too bright, too minty. Yeah, the mattes are a little minty. Lime definitely was one of them. There's no real pink in here. We got pear already. We got green gold. So I think I'm just gonna grab the green because I feel like that's another shade that is really similar, or at least I feel like would be close to the dark green in the Hela palette. So let's try these all out together. All right, so here we are putting them side by side. Definitely, like the greens could go. They're a little different, but not that far. I definitely think, what was that? Smoothie is too of a minty green or blue. It has the blue in there that I don't find any, which is this shade right here. I don't find anything similar in the Hela palette. But let's see, the matte, I forget what it was, half. This shade right here. You could see similarities. Definitely if you're wanting to dupe a look that you saw with the palette, you could do it. And then these 2 shades, definitely softer versions, but I can see this shimmer in like the shimmer down here at the very end almost. It's still, this one's a lot more of a yellow shimmer, and this has like a yellow gold to it, whereas this has just like a, I don't even know, like just a soft green. There's a little bit of gold in there, but the gold doesn't stand out quite as much as the golds in here. And then the, what was this, lime? I don't really see anything super, super close. There aren't really those tones that you see in the Avocado palette when it comes to the mattes in the Hela palette. The Hela palette is definitely like more dirty, like this is very yellow leaning, I feel like. This is like a very mossy, yeah, definitely nothing minty blue or minty green or anything on that. It definitely veers more to the brown side of the green. So some similarities. I definitely think you can get similar vibes, but I feel like as a whole, if you're using the Tasty Avocado palette, your looks would come out looking more minty, as opposed to the looks that you could get with this palette, kind of like with today, is not really minty. It's more like a dirty gold almost, even though I didn't use a bunch of the greens. Overall, it has just that dirty gold-ish look to it. Okay, next up, Toss had a few requests. Kaledios Flower Punk. Already got a video on it. GlamLite Martini palette, Juvia's Place, Tribe, and the Nomad. So 3 requests, and these were actually popular requests. I think this was the only one that asked for the GlamLite, but the Juvia's Place, both of them were popular requests farther along in the comments. I got a lot of them. But let's go ahead and dive into the Dirty Martini since she asked that first. And there are definitely some similarities that I can see here, just kind of looking back over. Definitely only in the green section, but we have some similar shades. So let me open it up so I can kind of compare the two. I'm gonna go ahead and swatch this green. It's not quite the right green. Again, more of that almost minty. Can you guys even see? Let's go ahead and swatch this more of a dirty gold. I don't think this is quite in the Hela palette. It's definitely a lot more dirty than the one in the Hela, but I'm gonna skip over these two. We're gonna do Vodka-tini. We'll do the green olive, even though this is a lot more neon or like just a vibrant type of green, a matte green, than is in the Hela palette. But we're gonna start with these 4. I should have said this like way earlier in the video, but I apologize for chewing gum in the video if it's distracting at all. It's a coping mechanism for my morning sickness, so it's kind of helping me get through the video. I'm not going to swatch this as such a blue-green. Then there's this one right here. I'll also go ahead and swatch. I will swatch Extra Dirty, or it reminds me of that kind of brown, dark brown-green. I'll do this one since I'm gonna have the extra finger, but I really don't think that's very similar. And then Dry Vermouth, this one right here, I'll do as well. Like as a whole, when I opened it, I was like, oh yeah, there's some similarities. I see these similar vibes. But as I'm going like shade by shade to pick them out, I feel like that's where I'm having a harder time going like, oh yeah, I see that in the Hela palette. But let's swatch these shades out. Okay, so here you are. I'm gonna keep it kind of down here because that's what it's gonna be similar to. And as a whole, like, I really don't see a whole lot similar. Sure, maybe the brown, kind of that brown shade, and even, what was it? What was the one I was looking at? Maybe this shade could be similar to one of the greens, but as a whole, I don't know. I think this is more of a miss now that I see them side by side than I anticipated beforehand. Next up, the Nomad by Juvia's Place. Let's pop into that. This one I kind of had, like was surprised a lot of people were asking for or just, you know, thinking of it, but maybe you're thinking more of like the brownie kind of vibes in this kind of corner of the palette. So I was like, okay, let's swatch it out and see. I'm just gonna go row by row like I've been doing and just see what I feel like is super close. I don't think this is amazingly close, but we'll swatch it. As with this one, I feel like there's that one shade in there that could be very close. We'll do this greenish color. Not gonna do that one. Not gonna do this one. Not gonna do this one. I don't see them in the palette. And then we'll do this one, even though this is a very different shade to that shade. I feel like Wolf could be close to it, but oh my goodness, I didn't even like wipe off my arm. One moment. Okay, now that I'm back, my arm is slowly being tinted a greenish color, but let's go ahead and swatch those 4 that I saw as similar between the 2 palettes. Okay, so here we are swatching them out side by side. I definitely can see like a vibe in general between the 2, but as far as like anything duping, there's definitely the yellows I feel like is going to be the closest, and maybe that this dirty color, even though it's a lot lighter than the other dirty color, the dirty brown in there is that similar vibe to it, but that really is it. I don't know, you guys can tell me of course below in the comments. It's not like my final thought is the, you know, final thought and you can't have a different opinion seeing these swatches, but just kind of hear me sitting swatching it with you guys on camera. That's kind of my thoughts. So of course let me know down below in the comment section which one you guys are thinking. If you disagree, feel free to let me know there. But that is the Nomad palette, all the similar shades that I saw swatched together. And then next is the Tribe by Juvia's Place, which I did agree that there are some similar shades between the Hela palette and this for sure. As a whole, like when I get into the nitty gritty, there are some differences, especially like, I don't know, I'm gonna swatch it out and see how many of them are actually super duper close. My fingers are so stained green, but I remember opening, I was like, oh yeah, I can see some similarities there. But now that I'm diving in, I'm like, not as much. I'm gonna skip over this. There's nothing orangey. This is definitely a different shade of matte green, but we're gonna swatch it because it's the vibe of it. This kind of reminds me of the Multichrome, even though it's not a Multichrome. This is definitely a different shade. It's like a coppery. This, I'm gonna swatch it just for that dark. It's more of a purple black, and this is more of like a green black, but we'll swatch that one just to compare. But anyway, and then what else is similar? There's no copper tone, so I think I'm just gonna swatch these 2. So let's see which ones are close. This is such a good palette. It's been so long since I've played with it, but even just swatching it, like, such good tones. Let me get a little bit more of that brown shade, and then the green. So here they are. I'm gonna put it down here. Definitely some similarities, you know, as a whole. Like if you did a look of the two, there would be a lot of similarities and kind of close-ishness between the two palettes. But when we're talking about dupes, like straight on dupes, I don't really see any real winners except for maybe this dark green with the dark green in the palette. Those I feel like are the closest. And then these two shimmers, the dark shimmers, as I said, this one is far more like just a green dark shimmer, whereas this is like a purple based dark shimmer. So they're different in that aspect. But if you did two looks with it where you were using that dark shade, they would look pretty darn similar if you used the greenish tones from each of the palette to create the look, that type of thing. Okay, let's go on to another comment. These are all on my community tab if you want to see them. I got another one, can be totally wrong, but the Nomad by Juvia's Place gives me similar vibes. We swatched that one. Ace Beaute Tropical Vibes. Okay, let's dive into the tropical vibes. There are a couple of these requests, but Laura's the first one I'm reading here. Let's dive into this palette. And of course, when you open it, like there's a lot of those greens that you're like, oh my goodness, yes, they're gonna be similar. But I feel like there's a lot of differences. I'll go ahead and hold these two up. As you can see, when we're talking about the greens between the palette, there's a lot more of like saturation and intensity and almost neonness to some of the greens that you really don't see in the Hela palette. So I'm gonna really try to stick to just swatching the shades that I feel like are really, really similar between the two palettes, because there's nothing quite this yellow. There's definitely this tone that I could see being similar, so we'll swatch this one. There's nothing quite that orange. This shade I will swatch. There's not that many shimmers in here anyway. I could see it being similar. Pickle, I can definitely see being a similar tone to one of the shades in the Hela palette. And then one more we'll grab, definitely the dark green. This tone, Olive, there really isn't that shade in the Hela palette. No shade like that in there in the Hela palette. Not like that. Army, I'll swatch just because it's close-ish to the dark green, even though I think this will be a lot more muted. Nothing like that. I don't think there's anything like this shade. I hope you guys can see the, what do you call it, National Park, but we'll swatch it. Nothing like that. This one I'll swatch because it reminds me of that dark kind of purple red. And then there's definitely nothing like that. Minty green. So we're gonna swatch these three. So here are the closest ties to the Ace Beaute palette. And as you can see, sure the greens could be similar, but there is a little bit of a difference. There's a lot more depth in the Hela one. There's no real gold shimmer, but that other shimmer, this one, you could argue is kind of close-ish to this green, even though there's a lot more just like white silver in the Ace Beaute than in the other one. It's more like a yellow green. And then the more mossy neutral tones, I mean, you could argue some are close-ish, but honestly not that close. And then the purples, sure, we could call those pretty darn close. The purple here with this one, sure. I don't know what you guys think. All right, moving on from there, let's see. Made by Mitchell, Feet on the Ground. You guys had to bring out the big one. Here is the mammoth of a palette. Opening it up, this one, I feel like you guys got some good solid similarities between the two palettes. There's definitely those tones, especially when we're talking about the tones of the greens. That's kind of the tone that I see in the Hela palette. So let's swatch them out and see exactly how similar they are. Okay, we're gonna grab Limeade first. And then we're gonna grab Bored in the House. We'll go ahead and grab Angela because they have that pinky tone in the palette, in the Hela palette. And then Bless You. It's not a multichrome, but it kind of reminds me of that multichrome shade. My arm, I don't know if you could see, is so sparkly. I will find sparkles for days. And then, let's see. This tone I can kind of see in the palette. We'll go ahead and swatch it. Oh, I skipped right over the yellow. I don't see a yellow. I don't see this bright purple. This is more of a pinky mauve. No, this is more of a neutral mauve. It's still mauvey. I wouldn't say there's anything similar. There's definitely a green shimmer that I could see it being similar to. And this more kind of brown, like, I don't know, gray green. This is more of a straight up green. I don't see it. This is like a very corally color. Don't see it. This one I can see in the wolf in the Hela palette. So let's swatch these three as well. Okay, then moving on, I'm gonna go ahead and do it even though I know this is way too purpley for the Hela palette, but we'll swatch it. Nothing quite this shade, nothing this shade. This one, I'll go ahead and do it. There is something-ish similar. I'm not gonna do this one, it's way too blue, not enough green in it. There's no black. There's a dark green, sure, even though I feel like it's too dark. There isn't this shade of green in the Hela palette. There is this shade of green. So we'll try these four and that'll be rounding out the palette or the colors that we're gonna swatch in the Feet on the Ground palette. I just made a mess with that purple. So of course top is Feet on the Ground and then bottom is the Hela palette. What do you guys think? This one I could say, like, as a whole, if you had the Feet on the Ground palette and was wanting to create some looks, you could probably get some pretty close ones that people would, like, maybe even mistake for the Hela palette, that type of thing. Like, they're pretty darn close. I still think they're different overall. If anything's the strongest, I feel like it's this green with this green. Those are really strong and close, but still different. And then the shimmers down here, the pinks, definitely different type of pinks. But I feel like this kind of gray-brown color is very close to this shade too, as well. So, I don't know. There that is. Oh, and also too, I should have said this is Wolf, and then this is that other shade that I swatched it to compare with Wolf. It's definitely a lot more intense, but they are very, very close. There are those similarities there. Okay, Laura Lane said BH Avocado Toast. She also said the Lois, I think it's Lois, Cosmetics Meet Me in the Underworld, and I got a lot of those requests, and I do not own that palette, so I'm so sorry I don't have the Underworld palette to compare it. And then the Colourpop Just My Luck and Mint to Be. I have the Just My Luck, I don't have the Mint to Be. So I have the Just My Luck, I will swatch, but I also have the Avocado Toast actually in my to-try pile. I finally bought it from Ulta, and I've been waiting to try it. I just haven't gotten around to it, but since I do own it, I might as well swatch it out. So let's go ahead and open up the Avocado Toast first. Brand new palette. I haven't even touched it. It's brand new, y'all. And let me see. There definitely is maybe some similarities here, but as a whole, I feel like the tones are just a little bit different. But I'm gonna swatch this one up here because it kind of reminds me of that pink in the palette. Skip this, skip this, skip this. It's too dark. I mean, I could skip this, but I feel like you guys might be curious. It's just too champagne-y. There isn't that champagne. I'll go ahead and swatch this because it's a green, even though I think it's a different green. This is a different green. Again, it's a different type of green. All right, my camera battery died. Not sure where I left off, but I know I was swatching that other green. They're just different shades of green in my opinion. I'll go ahead and swatch Haas, even though I think it's much darker than the grungiest darker shade in the Hela palette, but we'll swatch it out just in case. This one, I can definitely see there's a shade almost like the Wolf, but a bit darker. We'll do Superfood because I do feel like there's that kind of, this is more the tone of the green I see in the Hela palette, even though it's not quite exact. Paprika, no. Pit, I'll swatch it for that dark purple reddish shade. And then, not this shade, not this type of green, too dark. This is like a black. No, there's no black in the Hela palette. So we're gonna just swatch these three to round out this palette. I hope you guys don't mind me not swatching the entire palette because I feel like that would take me a long time, and just stick into swatching the shades that I feel like are very close. I think of the ones I swatched, they're definitely the strongest. I can see the dark green. This is a matte green and this is a matte green. That's where I definitely feel like I don't see any exact that I would pair them up with. And then this shimmer is too dark for the green shimmers in here. And even this dark green that I said was kind of similar to the dark green there, it's different. It's a different type of green. And then this shade, it's a far more purple and darker, but it is close. Okay, and then I also had the request for Just My Luck, so let me open this up. This is gonna be, in my opinion, very different because all of the greens, especially like here to here even, maybe this one, so here to here, is minty, and there is no, like, there's no mintiness to any of the greens, in my opinion, in the Hela palette. So I'm gonna swatch the shades that I feel like are similar. I definitely think I see like Mary Jane in there. Even though it's a different type of green, I can see some similarities. Olive You, there's no dark, you know, brownie tone like that. I'm gonna do Mamba for the darkest green, even though I feel like it's just got that different type of mintiness to it. And then the brown, sure. I feel like these are really the only two. I'm gonna go ahead and swatch this shimmer as well. It's kind of a green, the green shimmer. It's the same tone as these up here. So I'm gonna swatch it so you guys can see like how different it is when you compare it to the swatches against the Hela palette, because I just feel like it's such a different tone from what is in the, I messed up that Mary Jane, but it's such a different tone from what is in the Hela palette. Oh well, Mary Jane's a little dirty there. But here are those shades, and here it is against this palette. Like I said, the green I can see, the brown I can see, the matte brown. And then Mary Jane, I mean, I could see it being similar enough to this green right here. But as far as like this green, which is what I feel like is a lot of the tones of green in the Just My Luck palette, as you can see when you put it against the greens here, it's just so different. There's so much blue in it. And you really don't see any of that in the Hela palette. Okay, yeah, we are almost done, I believe. Let's see, keep on going. Louise Cosmetics, Meet Me in the Underworld. Again, don't have that palette. Louise Cosmetics, Meet Me in the Underworld. Don't have that. Kaledios Flower Punk. It is on my channel already. Let me go over to my Instagram now, because so that was all the comments that I got at the time of me filming this on my community tab. So now I'm going to go to the Instagram post that I shared, and I'm going to see all the people who submitted palette suggestions. So first one was made by Mitchell, Feet on the Ground. Got that. Another comment was Just My Luck and Meant to Be. I have the Just My Luck. I don't own the Meant to Be. Another one, Avocado Toast. We just did that. Meet Me in the Underworld. I don't have it, and I've never been more regretful of not buying a palette than now, because I feel like that would be very helpful to give you guys, but I just don't own that palette. Juvia's Place and the Nomad palette. Got that. Ace Beaute, the green one. I'm assuming she meant the Tropical Vibes palette. It's the only green one I have from Ace Beaute, so we got that. Kaledios Flower Punk. I had a lot of people on Instagram specifically asking for Kaledios Flower Punk, but that video is already up. Ace Beaute Tropical Vibes did it. And then the last one, someone asked for the greens and the Beauty Bay Wilderness palette. So this is going to be the last palette that we tried that I got requested for, and it is specifically for the greens, so more these like 2 middle rows in the Wilderness palette. So let's see. This is the first time I'm actually like sitting down and comparing them two, but I can definitely see similarities with the Multichrome with this shade. Not saying that this is the Multichrome, but it shifts kind of like I remember this shade's shifting. So we're gonna definitely swatch this one. I am not going to swatch this one. I almost did, but it's like a brow bone color, and the only shade similar in the Hela palette is very yellow, so they're not that close in my opinion. We're going to skip over the blues. We're going to skip over these greens because they aren't that tone. This is more close to the tone. You know what, we're going to swatch it. It's definitely too dark, but there is that darker green we'll swatch it against, and then we'll do the matte green for the matte green in the Hela palette. Oh, just touching this palette again. Such a good palette. Like the mattes are just so smooth. So let me swatch these 4 out really quick. Okay, let's see what else. We're gonna do Leaf and this, and oh, we'll do this one even though I think it's a brighter shade, and then we'll do this for the pink, even though it's more of like a golden here. And then these are all far too red and orangey to compare it with what is in the Hela palette. So let's swatch these last 4 out. Okay, so here we are comparing these 2 out. I definitely can see similarities, especially like this shimmer green. I feel like I see it in what I'm putting it above, basically. A little bit of a brighter shade for this against this shade. I can kind of see that. The pink's definitely different. The dark green, it's a different dark green, but they could be kind of close. The dark green shimmer, definitely don't see any similarities. And then this last shade that I said kind of reminded me of the Multichrome. I don't even know a great way. Let me just do with my clean fingers. I'm going to swatch. This is the Multichrome from the Hela palette, and then let me just grab that shade. It's not a Multichrome, I don't think. I think it's more of like a duochrome, but I'm going to grab that shade from the Wilderness palette. So here, you can see it's definitely similar. There's more green, and I would say more gold between the two of them, kind of comparing them. And you know what, since I went ahead and swatched it out on my finger, I went ahead and grabbed, this is from the Hummingbird palette from Oden's Eye, so this is Hela still. Hummingbird, Oden's Eye. This is from the Giant Wolves, the Multichrome, and then this is the really bright shade from the Giant Wolves palette. So here they are. These 3 are the Multichromes to compare them on the finger, and this is just a really bright shade that made me think of that. So as you can see, the Multichromes between the Oden's Eye 3 palettes that, you know, you guys were kind of like seeing and wondering how close they are, they all have very different tones in general. Like they're very bright, they're very shifty, but this is like very gold, this is very purple, this is very blue, and I hope you guys can see that here on the finger. But they all have that kind of reddish goldish shift to them. Alright, but that is going to do it for swatching out comparisons for the Hela palette. That was a lot of palettes, a lot of, very hasty and not the greatest swatches on my arm, but I hope it was a little bit helpful or just enjoyable to get to watch me compare all of these palettes together, and just fun to see them side by side, all the similar shades, and hopefully got some of your questions answered when it came to being able to see the tone, and hopefully being able to see the tone compared to other palettes that you thought might be similar will help you kind of grasp the tones that are in the Hela palette, because I definitely know, especially comparing, going between different pictures or even just different videos with the lighting, because we can't always get it super true to color sometimes, or super true to tone sometimes, or hue. So hopefully just seeing it compared against a palette you own, you might be able to say like, okay, now I can see how they're different, or I can see how they're similar. So hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully it was just fun to get to see the Oden's Eye Hela palette swatched and played with in another video from me. But let me know your thoughts down below, and as always, I just try to keep these videos helpful, so when I saw so many comments coming in asking for requests for seeing them swatch side by side, I was thinking this video could do that for you guys. So let me know your thoughts down below as always, and if you have any video idea suggestions or whatnot, or just things you're curious about to see on camera, if I have them, I'll always try to do a video if I can sneak it in, so let me know that down below in the comments. But that is gonna do it for me. As always, I'm over on Instagram, LadyKD92 over there if you want to follow me over there and see all the reels and up close eye pictures that I do. I am a mess right now, so I'm gonna try to clean up. With all that said, that's gonna do it for me. I'll see you guys very soon in my next video. Bye guys.